My CEP 810 Networked Learning Project learning goal was to learn how to knit a scarf. And you see here my completed scarf, so I did indeed finish my task. I started off with about.com knitting. That's the first resource that I used, and that helped me get started. And then I moved on to a variety of YouTube videos, which allowed me to see people actually knitting. And then I used Yahoo Answers, which helped me to get some specific questions answered that I had as I progressed through the project. The first thing I learned was to cast on, and when you cast on, you're basically just getting the yarn onto your needle so that you can begin knitting. And that starts with a basic slip knot, like so. So you make a slip knot, and then you slide the slip knot right onto your needle. You tighten it up a little bit so that it stays on the needle, but you don't want it to be too tight. So that is how you get your first stitch onto your needle. And then you take the other needle in your right hand and you slide it through the loop that you just made so that they cross like this. And then you're using the yarn attached to the ball for this, and you take it and you wrap it counterclockwise around the right hand needle, and then you slide it back through the loop, but you want to catch the yarn that you just wrapped around. You want to catch that on the tip so that you have a loop on each needle, and then you take the right hand loop and you put it right back onto the left hand needle. So you end up with 2 stitches right on the needle, and that's how you cast on. I'm just going to put a couple more stitches on so that I can show you the next part. The number of stitches that you cast on will depend on your pattern. For the scarf, I needed to cast on a total of 12 stitches. For this project demonstration, I'm just going to cast on a couple so that I can get started with the knitting. So there's 4 stitches, and that's just what it looks like when you have it all cast on. The second step in knitting a scarf was to do the basic knit stitch. And this was the simplest stitch because it was very much the same as casting on. You start with the same thing. You put the right hand needle through the loop, and again you use the yarn that's attached to the ball. You make a cross, wrap it around the right hand needle, slide it back through, but this time instead of putting that loop back on, you just let it fall right off, and then you end up transferring the stitch from the left hand needle to the right hand needle. So I'm just going to go ahead and knit a couple of more stitches here, and then once you get all of the stitches from the left hand needle onto the right hand needle, you have completed your first row of knitting. So here, once they're all on, that is my first row. It doesn't look like much yet, but when you continue on, it will look better. So there's my first row of knitting, and when you continue the knit stitch, it will end up looking like this. This is what the pattern looks like with the knit stitch. So you would continue that until your scarf was to the desired length. And then the final step is just to bind off, which is just getting the stitches off of the needle so that you can secure it and your scarf won't unravel. So let me just quickly show you a bind off. Again, you start off just knitting, doing a knit stitch. So I'm just going to go ahead and do one. And then you do one more knit stitch. So the same thing that you've been doing. But after you get 2 stitches onto the right needle, then you take your left hand needle and you pick up the bottom stitch and you pull it over the top of the right stitch, and then you just let it fall right off. And then you've taken and you've removed one of the stitches from your needle. So you're going to continue that pattern. You'll knit one and then you'll pull the loop over, and at the end you continue it until you have 1 stitch left on your right hand needle. You'll pull the string through that you have left and knot it, and then you'll just weave that through, and you'll end up with a nice secured edge like so. And that is how you knit a scarf.